Companies have been experimenting with generative AI's ability to create computer code for a few years now, so how's it going? Companies like Meta have implied that within a few years, mid-level software engineers will likely be replaced by automation. So is the technology really that good, or do software engineers need to refocus their skill sets to work with generative AI? We're going to discuss the future of coding on this episode of Today in Tech. I think we wanted to do this episode because we had heard a bunch of news, especially Mark Zuckerberg made a lot of headlines recently about this whole mid-level engineer. I want to call it nonsense, but we'll see what you guys think. So, and I wanted to check in on the state of coding in terms of companies and businesses. So, have most companies that you've worked with seen, are they adopting this generative AI in their process, or there's still a lot of experiments going on? Let's kind of set the baseline for where we're at. Murali, I'll start with you. What are you seeing?
So there are a lot of companies that are adopting generative AI. That's for sure. Generative AI is seen as a powerful ally. But Keith, I want to actually address the question head on that you mentioned first, right? There is a growing narrative out there that generative AI will somehow reduce the demand for traditional tech skills, right? But if you look at historical trends and our own market research, the data tells a completely different story. So if you see the PC revolution or the internet, they've unlocked entirely new industries and roles.
Right.
And we believe that generative AI is going to do the same. We, in fact, believe that this is going to exponentially increase the demand for people with strong technical skills as new business models and opportunities emerge. And we here at Skillsoft, we build learning content. We work closely with large enterprises across the world. We do a lot of surveys on IT skills and salary and research. And if you look at it, this space is among the most important space for the industry, right? With some of the highest earners out there. And what's even more telling is if you look at the IT organizations, they have a pressing need to upskill their teams, right? And this highlights both the value and the demand. So we strongly believe that this is not changing anytime soon.
All right, Eran, what are you seeing in your side of the woods?
Yeah, on our side of the woods, I think there is a kind of a misunderstanding of the role of software engineer and what is really the job description. The job description was never about writing code, right? The job description of a software engineer is solve business problems using software. And with that job description, things are not going to change, right? Whether we use assistance from AI agents or some sort of other automation to do the code generation aspect of that job description, that's fine. It makes us more productive. But at the end, the software engineer role is alive and kicking, and we'll just need, as Murali said, more of those, right? Because now we need to supervise all these AIs that are able of generating the coding aspects.
Is there a difference then what I'm thinking of when I think of maybe an entry-level coding person versus a software engineer? Like if you were just out of college and starting off, I think you would start as an entry-level coder. And from what we're hearing, a lot of we cover the IT job space, and we hear a lot of stories anecdotally as well. And the feeling is that companies are not hiring, or they're not replacing a lot of these entry-level coders. So at some point, yeah, software engineers are important because of all of the other things that they do. But that first layer is almost like maybe companies can think that they can get away with not hiring coders if a software engineer just starts with the baseline code and then fixes it from there. Or are you just not seeing that out in the space?
So
no, I'm sorry, Murali, go ahead.
No, thank you. So we have been hiring a lot of people, right? But that said, when I say we at Skillsoft, we've been opening, many roles and positions here as a technology team, right? And I see many other companies are doing that the same. There is a fear there in the industry that generative AI will replace the jobs. And I think some companies have slowed down their hiring, especially for entry level. And in fact, we posted some internship positions recently, and in one day we got like 700 applicants. That never happened before, right? But I think it's based on, again, this narrative out there, and people are sort of figuring it out as we go. But I think as we move forward, it'll be very clear, right? Learning to code is a fundamental skill. It's kind of like learning math, right? So, you still need to learn math. You still need to learn programming. Yes, now instead of as you know, we all use calculators, we use spreadsheets, but that doesn't mean that we stop learning math, right? So same thing goes for coding. There are AI tools out there that are extremely effective in spitting out code, right? But you have to have the engineers to be able to leverage it, think logically, solve problems, understands how systems work. And if you don't hire the lower layer engineers, how are they going to get experienced, and how is your organization going to grow, right? It's all a chain sequence.
Right.
So
okay.
I think it's also a change in like the mindset of the engineering. It goes down all the way to the junior engineers, the entry-level engineers. Everyone is now basically have to start thinking like almost a team lead or a developer manager, because they are, in a sense, leading a team of AI tools or AI agents that are capable of doing at least the mundane tasks completely automatically, right? So it's more about, hey, let me plan out the task. Let me break it to small manageable pieces that my AI can handle. Let me work on some sort of a review or acceptance to kind of know that what I got actually works, right? That's definitely an issue, especially for juniors who are getting code that gets spit out by Tabnine or otherwise, right? Like, how can I trust what just got generated and don't end up in a spiral of code that I don't understand?
Right.
So I think it's that shift in mindset that goes all the way from the juniors to the more senior ones. But senior ones, we kind of expect that level of thinking. And I think the transition is now that even as an entry-level engineer, you need to start thinking like that.
Are most of the engineers that you speak with, are they adopting it now? Are they embracing the technology, or do they still see it as a quote unquote enemy? I know that initially there was a lot of fear around generative AI and what it could do and what it couldn't do. I mean, we experienced that in the media side too, with writing and how it generates articles and reports. And I think most of us now have accepted it, and we use that as a starting point, and then we adjust after we see what it spits out. But a lot of the stuff is really good now, especially for writing social media posts and things like that seem pretty dreary when you have to do it day after day after day. It's like, well, this is actually pretty good now. So is there the same feeling on the coding side, or is there still either a fear or adversarial relationship? Eran, we'll start with you.
I don't think there's a relationship, but quite on the contrary. I think people are rooting for the tools to be successful, and they're like pushing the boundaries of what can be done. I think just like with writing, kind of the expert, like the people who get good utility out of these tools are the ones who figured out where does it work and where it doesn't work that well, right? So they kind of like able to push the boundary and kind of say, no, I will not generate the code for this particular thing with AI. Let me just write that down. Or I will, here's like something that can clearly be automated, and let me do that. So it's more that at least the good engineers are definitely embracing this and definitely trying to understand, develop some intuition on where does it work, where it doesn't work, and how to apply that effectively. And I'm sure the same goes like for the marketing materials that you mentioned, right?
Yeah, Murali, you saying the same thing, like that people are embracing it now, and like the good ones will learn more about it so that they can get more efficient, or is it still, we'll do it for certain things, we won't do it for other things?
Yeah, so this is a strong skill, just like any other skill, right? So initially there was some hesitation, because when you write a piece of product development code, you're writing it based on your specs, your requirements, your code base. There's a certain stylistic nature to writing software development, right? And the tools that you use in place. But these tools have become significantly better in recent times. There is absolutely no denying that, right? But as in most things, it's a double-edged sword, right? So it brings major benefits with people able to do things faster and also learn faster. I mean, it's a great tool now to even learn, ideate, figure out how to do things better and well. But at the same time, there are a lot of challenges and risks, right? We all know the risks that come with like security or compliance or accuracy issues that one needs to be cognizant of as you use these tools.
Right. And so my next kind of the next evolution of this would be how it would be the accuracy of the tool. So are most companies, are they satisfied with the accuracy of these tools? Because I've seen articles all over the map. I've seen reviews where they say, "Oh, this particular LLM is really good," and then I've seen other articles where like, "Oh no, it still stinks at coding," or maybe not stinks, but maybe like, okay, you still have to have a human go in to the code. Like I'm pretty sure there would not be a big trust issue here for someone saying, "Okay, whatever GenAI spits out is going to be perfect, and I won't have to look at it." I think everyone is still like, "Oh no, we're getting a human," even for the security and privacy things that you brought up, Murali. So where are we in terms of the accuracy? Because I'm hearing from both ends here.
Yeah. So at any point, every day, there is some model or other that seems to be doing better than another model, right? So these, based on the scaling laws, the capabilities continue to evolve, right? And they're making rapid progress. But the intrinsic nature of the LLM systems itself, if the initial input is not good enough, then you can build something that is very inaccurate or totally flawed, right? You can build an entire product or application maybe that has like deep flaws. So it's not because it's a line of code or like a particular function, but overall, there is a huge risk. So and this comes back to the developers, and we have to have a strong change management and training around this as well, right? So the developers, it's like the example I give my team says, you can, if someone gives me a Ferrari or an F1, I won't be able to drive it well enough, right? So similarly, maybe it's an extreme example. Similarly, you can have a very sophisticated system, but the car is only as good as the driver, right? So we need to have drivers who are able to use this system well, and when there are all these issues. So I think software developers' roles more and more will change, right?
Is it fair to say that maybe generative AI can be used as I'm assuming that we use it as a starting point. It generates this code, you go in and check it, or you have a human look at it, and then. But on the other hand, too, as things get more and more complex, does the role of generative AI maybe switch, and you have really complex code, and now generative AI looks for bugs or looks for fixes and things like that? Are you seeing that as well out in the space, so that we're not at the starting point? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. There are several different aspects here. So first, you talked about accuracy or LLM accuracy. It's important to understand that LLM is just one part of a very involved system that is at the end supporting the developers. A lot of the system actually has to do with, as Murali said, supplying the right context to the LLM, like giving it organizational awareness, like, hey, generate the code that is appropriate for my organization using my libraries, following my standards, etc. And I think initially, like in what I call the old days, which is like 18 months ago,
right.
it was kind of enough to see the dog playing the piano. So the fact that it generated code at all was enough of a party trick to get everybody happy. But now I think we're at the days of like asking, is the dog playing well, right? Like, is this code of high quality? Who is going to maintain this down the road? All right, we're generating more and more code, like increasing amounts of code are AI generated. Who is going to review that? Who is going to make sure that it has appropriate test coverage? Who's going to maintain this code when it fails in production on Friday night, right? So we're seeing definitely a lot of the market getting increasingly concerned about the quality of this code and, how to scale the code review process using AI, just like we scaled the code generation process using AI, right? Otherwise, you just move the bottleneck of productivity from generation to review, but you're still stuck in terms of end-to-end productivity.
Right. And so there, I don't know if you guys saw this. There was an article a few weeks ago from The Guardian where they were trying to they were trying to program to see if generative AI could program the Pac-Man game from the 1980s. And, very basic code back then. Obviously, it's not a lot of complex code. But the article said that, a lot of the LMs just failed miserably at trying to just program a simple game like Pac-Man. So you're still seeing a lot of headlines out there that maybe we're not ready for this. Is that just more of a headline spotlight grabbing thing, or are there still some concerns about the accuracy and I guess it's probably not fair to ask this question, but it depends on the project, right? It depends on and who you've got looking at it, right?
Yeah, I mean, building a product is very different from building, again, this Pac-Man game is at a sort of a very superficial level, right? I've been over the past 2 weeks watching this trend of vibe coding, right? Where there are a lot of YouTube videos out there where people go and create all kinds of flight simulator games or like snakes and ladders and Tetris, and it's fun to build. But again, that's a one dimension of it, right? Like you can split out a lot of code, but if it doesn't meet your spec or what you're trying to achieve in terms of scalability and performance and all those things, it doesn't do anything. So to the previous points that Eran is talking about, one of the key things that we've seen generative AI be extremely useful is things like reviewing pull requests, right? Submit a piece of code, you want it quickly reviewed. AI is great at that. If you want to find bugs, if you want a piece of code to be documented, fantastic at that, right? If you want to, develop unit test cases, great at that. If you want to write end-to-end test cases, if you want to create. So again, there's going to be a fantastic opportunity out there because we'll just be able to build so many new good products, right? With having better tools.
Right. And just for the viewers that didn't hear what you said, you called it vibe coding. Just explain that, or explain what that is. I typed it into the Google AI and got an answer. I have heard of it, but this is the newest thing where someone will just kind of explain in plain language to an AI what they want, and then it starts generating the code. I mean, that feels like a nightmare for a typically trained software developer, someone who was brought up learning languages. This is more like for the rest of us, right? For the non-programmers out there, or is there something serious that we should pay attention to around this vibe coding idea?
Not sure. I mean, it looks like right now it's for fun, right? I have not. Maybe my colleague here has seen something, people using it in production. But right now, what I've seen is it's mostly to fun, prototype things like that.
Yeah, Eran, are you getting a lot of good vibes from vibe coding?
Yeah. I think vibe coding started as the original term referred to really coding without having to look at the code at all, right? Which is like, I'm just writing these prompts and things happen. And if it works, I'm happy. And as Murali said, this is not the way I'd like my production work done, right? Like if I'm prototyping or if I'm doing something on the side, then this is definitely useful. This is not the methodology in which you create production code. But I think it's kind of the terminology drifted a bit, and now vibe coding is becoming almost synonym with anything that is mostly AI driven and does not necessarily mean that you don't look at the code. So again, I think we'll see more of that. And as Murali said, this is actually opening the door to many people who are amateur programmers or non-developers at all to create amazing things. So
right.
I think that this is great. Still, engineering, an enterprise system, it is far from that. Just like the level of architectural understanding that you need in order to do it is far away from vibe coding. And also, vibe coding does not carry over very well to vibe debugging, vibe troubleshooting, and vibe production faults, right? So it's kind of like that we need to really think throughout the entire software development lifecycle and not stop at just generating the artifact and declaring victory.
Right. On the on the business side, we've had a lot of shows where we were taking the more serious term of citizen developers. But it feels like citizen developers have now become vibe coders, it'd be interesting to see what some of these companies would be like vibe coding. It just has this weird Gen Z feel to it, and if vibe coding turns into Riz coding, I'm just going to jump off the building. That's I don't, and I'm not ready for vibe bugging either. But I think maybe I'm more bothered by the term than the actual process of it. But again, there is something to be said about citizen developers being able to tackle maybe some of the project that your senior developers just feel like it would just take too much time. Why not give it to someone who's not a developer or at that junior level to go solve some of these problems and maybe even get into bugging and I don't know if you'd want me trying to debug something, but I guess the idea around that could actually work in the future.
It's great for prototyping. Listen, a lot of the job of a software engineer, junior or senior, is to discover what is the actual specification of the problem, right? Because the product manager often gives you something that is relatively high level, and you need to kind of play it in your head until you see something and can say, okay, this is really what I meant, or this is how I want this to look. And so this kind of, call it vibe coding. Again, I dislike the term as well, but let's just use what has been coined, using this vibe coding to prototype and kind of discover what is the actual behavior that you wanted, and then going and doing it off properly. I think that's a very good use of the technology. Yeah,
and so that leads me to another question of the next generation of software developers, software engineers, coders, programmers, whatever we want to call them. It used to be back when I was in school in the late 80s, and everybody that I knew in the computer science department, they were all learning different languages, and they had to learn 3 or 4 different computer languages, and they were in the computer lab all the time. Is that going to go away now? Like, what do we teach in the next generation of college students? Are we just going to teach them generative AI or general artificial intelligence skills? Is the coding part going to go away? Are they not going to need to learn a language? And again, you probably went through the whole thing yourself too, because obviously you're professionals now and you're in the field, so you probably had to learn all these different languages. Where does that go with generative AI now? Murali, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So I think, again, I'll stress the point of, coding is like math, right? When we learn coding, irrespective of the language, you're trying to take a problem and break it down into logical steps, simplify it, get to an outcome, right? So if machines have not evolved to a stage where they have common sense to actually understand the real world, right? So you need a human who understands business context. You need a human who has a systems thinking to put the different pieces together, right? And there's a whole software development life cycle out there. So I think it's just bridging the gap. I think the power skills as we move forward will become more. I think irrespective of the language. So maybe I don't need to be an expert in Java or JavaScript, but I need to at least understand one language quite well, right? Be proficient, maybe it's Python, right? Whatever it is, so that I'm able to translate that knowledge, and when the machine generates something, I'm able to look at it and understand at a high level what it is doing, how it is working.
So you don't see the curriculum changing at all for schools in the future, or do you see maybe that they'll teach the basics and then say to them, well, if you need to go from this language to this language, just have the machine convert it. But again, you still got to validate whether the code is correct, right? But I'm sure a machine will validate it at some point too.
Yeah, so apart from being a CTO of Tabnine, I'm also professor of CS at Tabnine, which is an Israeli university. So I can speak to that directly, actually, from my experience.
Okay.
So I'll tell you a little dirty secret. We almost don't teach any coding in the university program. We teach fundamentals, we teach critical thinking, we teach math, we teach problem solving, we teach architectural thinking. All those things are not going away. The syntax of a language is not something we even teach typically. It's like, here's the book of the C language. That is something for you to figure out. So we teach you kind of how to read the book maybe, but not really the syntax of language. And syntax does become less important, right? So people who, like me, who were once experts in C++, no longer maybe have to worry about the syntactic nasty details of that and can just have AI deal with that. But the rest, architectural thinking, problem solving, partitioning into small pieces, that's like not going away. Yeah.
No, that's very well said. And I'll just add, right? So one thing that is coming across much clearer to us as a company and as an organization is this notion of having good, clear communication and command over basic language, right? So generative AI, if you don't have, even sometimes if you don't do the right grammar or build the right kind of structure in sentences, it can go off the rails. So I think communication and attention to detail and problem solving, these things are actually going to become even more important.
Right. So the next question, if we start eliminating maybe the teaching of specific languages, if we start seeding some of that to the technology, then the next question that people always ask is then, is AI going to make us dumber as humans? And all three of us have probably heard this from Google, where the use of Google to find information or to find an answer to something, I don't know if that has made us smarter or dumber in the long run. And obviously, as a grumpy old man with kids, I was like, "Oh, kids these days they're not as smart as they used to be." But I'm not completely sure about that. So, will AI make us? Will generative AI in the coding space make us less smart? See, I'm already doing words that aren't making any sense.
So that's a great point you took, right? So the kids, and I have two kids, they are smarter in different ways. I can do the math faster than them or certain things faster than them.
Yeah.
But I see my kids, having certain skills like creativity or doing things like much better than I can do it, right? So it's going to be a different sort of skills. I do want to stress a point on the earlier statement that Eran made, right? So in universities, they don't teach the languages, but companies like us who are in this business actually do teach languages, because people still have to learn that. They still have to learn Python and Node, or they either learn it from books or YouTube videos or take courses from the likes of us.
Right. And is the demand still out there, from these people that want to learn all this stuff? Yeah. You see it too, Eran?
Yeah, for sure. It's not like, listen, it's not going away that quickly, because at the end, somebody needs to be the editor of whatever is getting generated, right? Somebody needs to review it. Like, at least as a user of GenAI, you need to roughly understand what's going on to say, okay, yes, this is what I meant, and I understand enough in order to maintain it down the road, or understand enough to create the next prompt and communicate the changes that I would like to be made, right? So I totally agree with Murali's point. Like, communication has always been key, but now it's even more important.
Yeah.
And like, again, if I go to the beginning of my statement about this, like, every developer needs to kind of start developing leadership or management skills, and communicating clearly is definitely one of those skills. But also critical review or critical reading of whatever comes back from the GenAI is another critical skill. And if you don't know Python at all, how are you going to review or look at whatever Python gets thrown back at you from the AI, right?
I'm just basically hoping that there's going to be a thumbs up for the generative AI. Be like, check this code, and it'll be like, okay, it's all good. Okay, great, thanks.
But I think it needs to be checked with respect to some specification, right? And nobody writes ever a full specification of the desired behavior, because that will be as hard as writing the program.
Right.
And so really, as you are taking this partial specification and iterating over it as a developer, what you're actually doing is creating the full specification or the full behavior that then you initially have to review, right? And so kind of being able to review the code that comes back, the behavior that comes back, and understanding the nuances of that is a new skill that needs to be developed.
All right.
So again,
So there is a general. It feels like there's a general consensus that, for the most part, generative AI being able to generate code, check code, as long as there's a human involved. But as we see the next generation of the technology move forward, we see things like DeepSeek, which is a language model that can be developed really quickly. We also see Agentic AI, where we're now telling it to do not just one thing, but now we're having it do multiple things. Do you see this in the coding space as well? Are we going to start seeing agents that are going to be generating code, but then also doing that next step, or generate, debug, and all that? Yeah,
we're already there. Agents in Tabnine do very sophisticated things that you can really accelerate, but at the end, only you, the human, know what needs to be done, and kind of guiding this army of agents and making sure that what gets generated is the right thing, the thing that you wanted, is not as easy as it seems, right? You need to communicate with them, you need to consume the result, you need to kind of direct them the right way. A lot of the bottleneck is really in kind of the specification. How do you describe what is that you want? Right. And so this is an iterative process that you go together with the AI and refine until you get the desired result. It's not like you sit at home and write this specification of 200 pages of what the application should do, hit a button, it gets created. It's much more iterative and kind of refinement based than that.
And Murali, what are you seeing in the world of agents? Are you enthusiastic about it, optimistic, or cautious?
Absolutely. So for the past year and a half, we have here developed many agents to work, right? Again, there is this notion of human in the loop. Anytime an agent goes something, so we've been building many product capabilities using agents, but there still needs to be a human in the loop, irrespective whether it's a programming task or it's to create content, right? As you know, you are a human in that loop. We think of this as co-intelligence, right? And this week, for example, I'm here in Rochester to meet with the team, and we have a collaborative section, and it's all about, just this morning we've been talking about like how do you build different agents to do different things? How do these agents talk to each other to accomplish? What are the business goals, right? So software development is, at least for some of us involved, it's a lot of fun, figuring this out. It's a lot to do with, collaborating with others, ideating it, figuring things out. Coding is just a small part in the day-to-day life of a software developer.
Yeah.
Right?
All right. So getting back to the Mark Zuckerberg comments with the mid-level engineers, I mean, do you think he was just trying to shake things up and maybe get people to think about it or talk about it, or or is that where we're heading? Like it's not just entry level anymore.
There are statements coming from some big companies like this, right? And you would see the similar statements coming from many big companies. But someone pointed out, hey, if the agents are going to replace, why do they have like 10,000, like 1,000 job postings? Or then so part of it, yeah, they're cutting some jobs, they're hiring some jobs, but there's these same companies are like, I mean, I haven't checked Meta's job postings lately, but they still continue to hire, right?
Like in this space, do you still see a labor shortage for technical skills and technical knowledge?
Labor shortage, absolutely, right? We have done a lot of surveys where more than 50% said there's a lack of talent and that people need to upskill and reskill. Even with the tooling, there is a big gap and there's a big opportunity as we move forward.
Yeah, we didn't even cover the reskilling part. Is that something that will also then grow as people may be thinking, okay, well, I can have generative AI do about 50% of my tasks. Let me learn another 50% so that I become more valuable in my company. Like, still go that technical route.
Oh, that's a fantastic point.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So I think, if we look at 2, 3, 4 years down the line, maybe the typical software developer, the way their workday might change, where they're talking to customers, looking at other people. Maybe there's going to be new roles created, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, something between the product manager, and the senior developers. These lines are getting blurred right now as product managers are able to at least prototype or write code some of the things in order to see, to better understand the specification or the desired behavior before they give it off to the professional developers. Right?
So maybe my new job title will be vibe coding project manager, and I'll just be sitting on a lounge chair with a drink in my hand, going just doing the vibes. All right,
Vibe broadcaster, Keith.
I'm a vibecaster. Maybe that should be the new role going forward. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being on the show. I had great conversation, and I really appreciate you guys giving me the updates on the coding space. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us on.
Thank you very much.
Great talking to you. Bye-bye.
That's going to do it for this week's episode of Today in Tech. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, add any thoughts you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.